Researchers found that people who are resting experience more anxiety than people who are actively working, not less, more. And if you've ever collapsed onto the couch at the end of a long day and felt, not relief, but a strange, creeping wrongness, like you're getting away with something, like the stillness itself is a problem, that finding is about you. It's about the specific, invisible system running underneath everything you do. Here's what nobody says out loud. For a lot of people, rest doesn't feel like rest. It feels like a threat. You stop moving, and your brain immediately starts producing a list. Things you should be doing. Things you've left undone, ways you're falling behind, and after a while, you stop trying to rest at all, because the guilt makes stillness worse than staying busy, so you stay busy. Not because you want to, because you've forgotten what it feels like to stop without punishing yourself for it. But here's what I want you to understand before we go any further. And this is the thing that changes everything. That guilt is not a character flaw. It is not proof that you're anxious or broken or incapable of peace. It is a learned neurological pattern, a response your nervous system built over years from everything you absorbed about what rest means and what it makes you. And because it was built, it can be rebuilt, not with discipline, not with a better morning routine, with understanding. Because the moment you see exactly what's running beneath that guilt, something loosens. And once it loosens, it doesn't tighten the same way again. By the end of this, rest is going to feel different to you. Not as a concept you agree with, but as something your body actually allows. Let's start with what's actually happening when you lie down and immediately feel like you shouldn't be lying down. Your brain runs on something called predictive processing. It's constantly generating a model of what should be happening based on what has happened before. And if your nervous system has spent years associating rest with danger, with falling behind, with being seen as unproductive, with some quiet threat of failure, then it will generate an alarm response the moment you stop. Not because there's a real threat, because your brain predicts there might be. The guilt you feel isn't a moral signal, it's a pattern match. Your nervous system scanning the present moment, comparing it to everything it has learned and saying, this doesn't match what's safe. And this is the part most people miss. That guilt is not coming from you. It is coming from a system inside you that was built from your experience, built from the messages you absorbed about rest, about worth, about what makes a person valuable. And that system runs automatically, beneath conscious thought, which is why you can know you deserve a break and still feel terrible taking one. Knowing doesn't override the system, that's not how it works. But understanding where the system came from, that starts to loosen it. Here's what I want you to stay with for a moment, because this is the turn most people miss. Rest guilt isn't just about productivity, it's about identity. Somewhere along the way, your sense of self got tangled up with your output. And I mean that in a specific, neurological way, not just as a cultural observation. When we repeatedly act in a certain way, that behavior gets consolidated into what psychologists call our identity-based beliefs. The deep, largely unconscious convictions about who we are and what we do. If you've spent years treating busyness as proof of worth, your brain eventually stops asking whether to be busy. It just registers rest as a threat to the self, not a moral failure, a perceived identity mismatch. And the body responds to that the way it responds to any threat. Think about the people in your life who seem to rest without guilt. You've probably met them. They close the laptop at 6 and don't think about it again. They take a nap on a Saturday without making it mean something. You might have looked at them and thought, must be nice. They must have figured something out. And here's the thing, they have. Not discipline, not a different personality, a different automated system. They learned, somewhere, that their value is not contingent on their output. That rest is not a reward you earn. That stopping is not the same as falling behind. And because they learned it early, or because they were lucky enough to have it modeled for them, it got built into the system. The same system you can build, not by telling yourself to feel differently, but by gradually, consistently, feeding the system different information. Now, I want to name a couple of patterns that show up for almost everyone who struggles with rest guilt, because recognizing the pattern is the first step toward interrupting it. And if any of these land, I want you to drop a word in the comments, because I promise you, you are not alone in this. The first pattern is what I call productive procrastination as rest avoidance. You sit down to relax, and within 3 minutes, you've reorganized your email, texted someone back, made a snack, checked the news. You never actually stopped, you just switched tasks. And it feels vaguely better than sitting still, because doing that something quiets the alarm. But here's what's actually happening. You've trained your nervous system that the only way to feel okay is to keep moving. So movement becomes compulsive, not chosen. You're not productive because you want to be. You're productive because your nervous system doesn't know how to tolerate stillness. The second pattern is the permission cycle. You can only rest after you've earned it. After enough is done, enough checked off, enough justified. But of course, is a moving target, because the goalpost for permission keeps shifting. You finish the thing that was supposed to unlock the break, and suddenly there's another thing. And another. And you're exhausted, not because you worked too hard, but because the nervous system is running a loop that has no natural endpoint. There's no signal that says, now you've done enough. Because the signal never existed, because rest was never supposed to be something you earn. Here's an open question I want to plant right now, and I'll come back to it. If rest has to be earned, what is the currency? What is actually being paid? Because I think the answer to that question is the key to the whole thing, and it's not what most people expect. We'll get there. But first, what's underneath both of those patterns? Underneath the compulsive busyness and the endless permission loop? It's this: a deeply held, largely unconscious belief that you as a resting person and you as a worthy person are two different people. That to stop is to become someone you don't want to be, someone who doesn't care enough, someone who will fall behind, someone who will be seen and found wanting. This is not a character flaw. It is a belief that was installed through culture, through family, through school systems that evaluated you on output, through workplaces that rewarded overextension, through 1,000 small moments that taught you that stillness equals stagnation. And because it was learned, it can be unlearned. Not immediately, not through affirmations, but through building a new relationship with rest, one small, intentional experience at a time. Now back to that question, what is rest supposed to be purchased with? Here's what the research actually shows. The brain does not recover through low-effort work. It does not recover through switching tasks. It recovers through genuine disengagement, through the activation of what neuroscientists call the default mode network, which only comes fully online when you stop directing attention outward. This is the network responsible for self-reflection, emotional processing, memory consolidation, and creative synthesis. It is not idle time, it is essential maintenance. When you deny yourself real rest, you are not being productive. You are borrowing against a system that will eventually demand repayment, in burnout, in cognitive decline, in emotional flatness, in the slow dimming of the very drive you were trying to protect. Rest is not the reward for productivity. Rest is the condition that makes productivity possible. And the guilt you feel when you try to take it, that guilt is not protecting you from laziness. It's protecting a false belief about what you have to do to be enough. If this is landing, drop something in the comments. I genuinely want to know, when was the last time you rested without guilt? Because I think for a lot of people, the honest answer is painful. So what do you actually do with this? Because understanding is not the same as change, and I don't want to leave you with insight and no traction. Here's the honest answer. You build a new system by acting against the old one. Deliberately, repeatedly, in small enough doses that the nervous system can tolerate it. Not a 2-week vacation. Not a dramatic overhaul of your schedule. 10 minutes. Sit down with no task, no screen, no productivity rationale. Feel the discomfort. Don't flee it. Let the alarm ring, and don't respond to it. Because every time you do that, Every time you stay still through the guilt, instead of escaping into busyness, you are sending the nervous system a new data point. You are saying, rest did not end me. The threat was not real. And over time, slowly, the pattern updates. This is how identity changes. Not through a decision, through accumulated evidence. You don't become someone who rests without guilt by deciding to be that person. You become them by resting, again and again, and watching nothing bad happen, until the system eventually stops predicting danger where there is none. Here's the last thing I want you to hold. You are not a person who doesn't deserve rest. You are a person who was taught that. And there is a profound difference between those two things. One is a truth about who you are. The other is a pattern that was built, and anything that was built can be rebuilt. The science is not vague on this. Neuroplasticity is not a motivational metaphor. The brain genuinely, physically updates its architecture based on repeated experience, which means the rest guilt you have carried for years, the low-grade tension, the compulsive doing, the permission loop that never closes, none of it is permanent. None of it is you. You are not broken. You are running an old system, and old systems can be replaced. If this video helped you see something in yourself that you couldn't quite name before, that's what this channel is here for. Subscribe if you want more of this kind of thinking. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And start small. 10 minutes of guilt-free nothing. That's your homework. Not to feel good about it, just to do it. The feeling will follow. It always does.